주호 때문에. 주호 때문에. 주호 때문에. Я думаю, це буде піздець. Але що буде, то буде. Я так понял, це нове. Сильно проторможу, не чую машину. Трошки розслабитися. Пенальті. Музики не чути. Чи мене буде зубан? 16. Raz, że to odchodziło. Чё мне так хуёво чудо на видео? Sorry. Ми там дивився, чи не дивився. Вважаємося. Ой, блядь. Треба було так робити.
Як мене чути? Як мене чути? Чого її несе? Та ні, ну я так файно йшов. стрібло. Да. От я грав цілу гру, бля, щоб отак сталося. Ай, блядь, сука. Нічого, просто домовляємося. Ну я тут бардак, сам бачиш. Я тут тихонько гуляв. Нічого, бардак.
Gran Turismo. Ай. Проходжу челендж. Це вже новий старт. Ні, я не хочу більше грати це. До побачення.
Here in Berlin for Gran Turismo World Series 2. How is this one going to play out, and how are the championship tables going to reflect the results as we head further into the World Series of this season? Well, Kylian Drumont continues the strong momentum for Subaru as they line up on pole position here today with Thomas Leboutelet and BMW alongside. Then it's Porsche. Disappointment in London. They bounce back to start P3 ahead of Nikolai Sejak in fourth position, the Polish driver who makes his debut for Nissan. Then it's Pole Europe for Mazda, P5. Valerio Gallo in the Honda NSX is sixth on the grid. Lucas Binelli lines up P7 for Mercedes AMG, and Al Flair with the Saudi Arabian driver for Toyota, P8. De Bruyne lines up P9, and then you've got Giorgio Mangano in 10th position for Lexus. João Jesus for Ferrari in 11th position, and Jay Murphy, the McLaren driver. A lot of support for him here tonight. And now, of course, our first look at the tyre strategies for the first time. Now, we can see the top two, Drumont and Leboutelet, they've started on the soft combative tyre, which to me indicates that they're going to try and make a break early.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've seen the pace from Drumont in qualifying, and of course Leboutelet, both very quick over a single lap. Last thing they want to do is ruin the ability to run that pace by running in a pack. So, yeah, go for soft tyre. I'm surprised to see Sejak there running the hard tyre in P4. So he will be basically in the way of all the medium runners behind, but the longer he can keep them there, the better for his race. So definitely some strategy in those tyre calls already.
Yeah, it seems like he's sort of trying to go ugly early, as it were. Get those hard tyres out of the way as soon as he possibly can. Hold the pack up while they're all quite close behind and see whether he can use that to his advantage. Well, let's see what will happen. Who has called the strategy right? Who will be taking the checkered flag and those all-important 6 points? We're about to find out as Gran Turismo World Series 2 for the Manufacturers' Cup here in Berlin is underway. Drumont and Subaru lead them down towards the first corner, followed by Leboutelet and then Serrano and then Sejak in the Porsche and the Nissan respectively. Don't expect any dive bombs down into that first corner, but Serrano closing up. I say that, there are some dive bombs taking place as Jura is making hay whilst the sun shines. He's already on the attack against Sejak, but Sejak goes back through on Valerio Gallo as well as Jura, back up into fourth. So moves being made in the mid-pack there, and Sejak looking a little bit vulnerable as we expected on those hard tyres.
Yeah, Sejak there showing Jura the outside of the circuit. Really hard defending early on, but you're seeing the difference there, those hard tyres. They take a while to fire up. They're going to be cold right now. When they're cold, they have less grip. So right now, Jura, Benelli, Gallo all making advantage of the fact they have a softer compound, is up to temperature quicker, and they're just able to drive by him like he's standing still. You could argue maybe that's not a bad thing because they're not going to squabble so much, but if you said, Jack, you've gone from 4th to 7th in about 3 corners.
Yeah, losing track position means, of course, you're going to have to gain that a little bit later on. You can see fairly robust driving from Sejak coming through the Michael Schumacher S there as well. He's just got Alifa in the Lamborghini right behind him, who's on the medium compound of tyres. Then you've got 3 other hard-shod runners. Meanwhile, sharp end of this race, nothing really to report from Drumont and Laboutelet. They've cleared off about a second or so ahead of Jose Serrano, as one would begin to expect. First corner incident here is under investigation, as we can see on our screen as well. We'd love to get a replay of that and see exactly what happened. We did see some dive bombs to the inside there for Pole Euro, but was there a bit more that meets the eye that we perhaps didn't quite manage to make a break of? Either way, we go on to the Nordschleife layout for the first time, and it's Drumont in front from Laboutelet, and now is where those soft tyres on these medium speed corners are going to be really having their advantage.
Yeah, and you wouldn't know the GP circuit is in any way related to this track when you get onto it. It's completely different. You go from long run-offs to barriers being far away, gravel traps, to basically, if you make a mistake, you are in that barrier. And lots of curbs here, you have to memorise which ones you can and which ones you can't touch. It's a unique challenge just to get round here on your own, let alone when you're sharing the circuit with 11 other maniacs. So a lot of fun there. But speaking of maniacs, here's Valerio Gallo in the NSX. Very, very fast driver and trying to close the gap between himself and Jose Serrano. So Serrano is the leader of the medium runners. This is something you have to keep an eye on right now as we go to the front of the field. Drumont having to try and defend from Thomas Laboutelet. He's going to look maybe around the outside here. Not really a spot to get that done. But again, we're seeing the Achilles heel of that Subaru. They've ended up able to drive up to the back of it, but decides better of it as Thomas Laboutelet. He's going to stay in second place for now.
Drumont a little bit deep though going into that right-hander. I wonder if that might have compromised him a little bit, but he's certainly feeling the pressure here of his compatriot, the 2 Frenchmen at the sharp end of this race, and you can see how Laboutelet is able to use that slipstream to his advantage to close up. I don't think he's going to invent something into this section of the circuit, because it will both send them into the barrier, and indeed Laboutelet thinks better of it. But the question is here for Kylian Drumont, how long can he keep Laboutelet behind? Is it going to cost them time, though, as well? Because Serrano's there, 2 seconds off the back of them. If the top 2 start squabbling amongst one another, all that's going to do is bring them back into the gap that they've created and bring Serrano Gallo potentially into play for this.
Yeah, think of the long game here, because everyone's got different strategies, everyone's trying their own little thing here. So I think if I'm Thomas Laboutelet in that BMW, I'm thinking, right, okay, I know I'm going to pass this guy on the back straight if I'm within half a second. So I'll just stay there for now and let this guy pull me along, because in the medium speed corners, that Subaru is super quick. Anyway, back to T1. I think there was an incident here with Giorgio Mangano. Contact there. Oh, it's a Supra there. Toyota getting spun, kind of Brewer, but then Mangano getting spat out by João Jesus there. So I'm not quite sure. No further action from the stewards. I think that was just everyone tried to go for the same bit of tarmac there, didn't they?
It's difficult, isn't it, when it concertinas up in corners like that, especially in the first corner, and you know it's not particularly wide part of the circuit. It really does bottleneck up. So I guess race direction just deeming it, first corner dramas, don't do it again. As long as that doesn't happen any further times, then it should be all right. So let's look at the drivers here who are on the hard compounds of tyres, the likes of Sejak, Jesus, De Bruyn and Murphy. How are they going to play this one? Because, of course, they're hemorrhaging time at the moment. They're sort of taking the pain early on, but in theory, the race will come back to them in the latter stages, depending on what strategies they go for. You can see that brought up on our screen at the moment. You can get 2 laps out of the soft tyres if you're particularly careful. But if you're the likes of Laboutelet and Drumont, I mean, look, they've cleared on 3 seconds at the sharp end of this one. They're not hanging about here. They're not saving their tyres, are they?
Yeah, but look at this as well. The difference here in speed up the hill. Just in that draft, I'm surprised Laboutelet went for 6th gear there, maybe just to save that little bit of fuel. Fuel is also a concern around here, by the way. You have to make sure you're fueled up the right amount to get to the end. Sounds simple, but it's hard to do in practice when you're there driving these things around the ring. But yeah, as you say, Tom, like, it's just trying to make sure you don't fall too far back at this point. And it just, I get the impression that Laboutelet is just kind of biding his time. We see the background there, Jose Serrano, that is the gap visually to third position and the start of those medium runners. So for the carousel for the first time, great bit of racetrack there. You really feel the car fighting for its life through there, and Gallo there leading the charge for 4th place onwards. But I say, if anything, falling back from Serrano a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out, because I was mentioning about the hard shot runners, you know, damage and limitation for them, but exactly the same story for the medium shot runners. You've got now 3 sort of sets of drivers all in their own group, all running their own strategies, and this is what happens in the Manufacturers' Cup when you have races like this, is that, you know, they're not necessarily the most action-packed ones in the first couple of laps, but towards the end, once all the strategies all work out, the fuel stops, the tyre saving and so on and so forth, once they've all taken place, you get a really exciting crescendo to this race. So the likes of Drumont and Laboutelet, fine, the race is great for them in these early stages of it, but the latter stages, they're going to be taking that pain that the drivers on the medium and the hard runners are suffering from now, so they're going to be slower towards the end of the race, and the converse for those behind.
They're coming through the last third of the Nordschleife. Now, my favourite bit of racetrack this, it's just so fast, so flowing. You have to really trust the car through here, especially through this section here. You come over the Flansgard jump, see it coming off the floor there, and then you're met immediately with the Stefan Beloff S coming up now, where the car just skips all over the place. You almost have to just trust in that mysterious aerodynamic thing that you can't see, but it is there, and then just thread the car through the curves. It's an exhilarating piece of racetrack, but it is very much one at a time through there, as Gallo has pulled away slightly from Paul Ura. Now, what I'm interested in seeing now is whether Drumont has managed to gap Laboutelet, which he has a little bit, a second now. That is kind of getting out of draft range, so that might mean Laboutelet won't be able to pass here going down towards T1.
Yeah, let's see whether Laboutelet can use the straight line speed to his advantage if he can close up, as you say, from that gap that has been created. What about Lucas Benelli, Mercedes-AMG? Benelli, we can see him there, very interesting driving position that he has. He sort of sits quite close to the wheel, almost on it, really, whereas you look at Paul Ura, much more relaxed in terms of his arm positioning there. And now Benelli has got the bit between his teeth, because he's got the slipstream and he's got the straight line speed to take advantage of Paul Ura as we come down the Döttinger. Side by side we go between the Mazda and the Mercedes. It's going to be nice and easy for the Mercedes to go through, but what about, yeah, exactly that, what I was about to say, the Honda, because they're going to get boxed in here. Valerio Gallo loses 1 place, loses 2 places potentially, because Paul Ura is now side by side with Gallo as they come up and over the rise. It's always a bit tense and a bit sketchy coming through here 2 by 2, but Gallo just decides to not fight it too hard, as the top 2 at the sharp end of this one come into the pit lane at the end of the first lap off the soft tyres. Now, which way are they going to go in terms of their strategy?
Yeah, fresh set of the virtual Dunlop tyres going on. Our first time, our first Dunlop pit stop, I think this is, Tom. So cool to have Dunlop, of course, now as official partner of the Gran Turismo World Series. What's going on, though? So softs come off, mediums go on there for Drumont. Same for Laboutelet as well. Kind of Bruin coming in, getting off those hard compounded tyres early. Only doing 1 lap on those. So I guess going for 3 on the medium then, or 4 on the medium, it must be.
It's going to be an interesting one to see how that works out. You know, medium tyres, they're okay, but, you know, in terms of their longevity, certainly not as good as the hard tyres. The converse is the hard tyres are a few seconds a lap slower than the medium. So I guess he's just trying to take the pain for that and get off it. You can see there he's a full-time automotive engineering student, is Kai de Bruyne, so he's well-versed in sort of adapting to changes on the fly. And let's see whether that's one that will pay off for the Dutchman, who, of course, as we know, is still seeking his first podium in the Gran Turismo World Series. Meanwhile, sharp end of this race is now occupied by Jose Serrano, who's in the lead. Lucas Benelli, who, of course, we saw getting ahead of Ura and Gallo down the Döttinger at the end of the last lap, now sits in second in the Mercedes-AMG. Ura's into third. Gallo's here just keeping a watching brief in 4th place. It's interesting as well, looking at the likes of Drumont and Laboutelet, because they went from the soft to the medium tyres. I mean, Laboutelet, he has to follow what Drumont's doing if he doesn't want to lose track position. That's the problem with being second on the road. You've kind of got to follow the strategy and then work it out later on.
Yeah, I mean, that's not always a bad thing, though, because I think if the positions were reversed, you'd just see the same sort of thing. You would see the Laboutelet leading from Drumont. It would just be a waiting game. And sometimes it is that. I mean, it's a high-speed game of chess. I say that a lot in these broadcasts, because it is. These guys are at the level now where strategy often decides the race. The actual driving performance is so close, so we'll keep an eye on those and keep you informed. Benelli's struggling there for the first part of the Hudson-Back complex, just trying to get the car turned in. Of course, that AMG front engine, so prone to sometimes a little bit of understeer. Looks like it's really struggling with the front end through there, but able to keep the pace for now. Meanwhile, looking down the field, Sejak on the hard compounded tyre is ahead of Giorgio Mangano, starting on the medium. So Sejak having a very good race at the moment, despite starting on that slower tyre. Yeah,
we know that Mangano, of course, was caught in some bother, don't we, down at that first corner, which kind of started the Lexus drivers' race off on the back foot. They've, bear in mind, they're reigning champions. Lexus have had a dog's day so far of 2025. It's not been brilliant, pointless in London, and now down in 7th place for this. They'll be really hoping for fortune to favour them in the second half of this race, and also in the second half of the Gran Turismo World Series for 2025 as well. Benelli a little bit wide there, just going through that right-hander. Might allow Jura and Gallo to close up just a touch. It's, again, very much one at a time through this part of the lap, but you wonder whether Benelli's just starting to push a little bit harder, maybe just making a couple of mistakes and allowing a bit of a sniff of an opportunity here for Jura and Gallo possibly to see where Benelli is a little bit weaker, maybe on the exits of the corners or the entries to the corners, wherever it may be, and use that to their advantage to try and create an overtaking opportunity.
Yeah, I get the impression Benelli actually is maybe holding these guys up a little bit at the moment. We'll see though. He needs to try and bridge that gap, because we know Paul Jura will go for a move. We know Gallo will go for a move if he sees one there, so always one to watch out for.
So Serrano it is at least 2.5 seconds to the sharp end of this race. He's still got the 3 hard shot runners of Sejak, Jesus and Murphy, the 3 newcomers, 3 out of 4 newcomers who are racing in this one. I have to say, Nafir Al-Faliya, the Saudi Arabian driver making his debut in this event, is doing a great job of things in the Lamborghini, currently sitting in P5. Meanwhile, this is Mangano returning the favour on Sejak, just coming through that left-hander.
Yeah, I think I saw the indicator on there from Sejak, just basically saying, yeah, go on, mate, off you go, don't worry about it, pull me along. And yeah, there they are. Jesus there as well, of course, right behind Sejak. And man, that's that 458. I haven't heard a V8 Ferrari like that for a while. Sounds great, that thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, you would say that, now that you've just gone and bought one.
And it's
not a 458, but a Ferrari V8.
All right.
No, it's a cracking sounding car. It's a 9,000 RPM out of the box, that car. It's the last naturally aspirated V8 Ferrari ever made, and probably likely to have ever been made as well, with Jesus behind the wheel, piloting it in 8th position. Meanwhile, 2nd, 3rd and 4th still running nose to tail with one another. Benelli ahead of Jura, ahead of Valerio Gallo as they come over the rise. So all pretty steady at the sharp end of this one, but Serrano doing a good job of having built a gap actually to the trio of drivers. I say fairly steady because Jura is now on the attack against Benelli as they go side by side, and the door is going to open here for Gallo. There's a bit of contact in the mid part of that right-hander there as Benelli just sort of almost merged into one. The upshot is the Brazilian driver drops 2 places.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that coming. I think now these guys have been waiting to sort of be released from Benelli, and I think we're probably going to see Benelli fall to the back of these guys now. He had a good effort having the Mercedes up there, but just hasn't quite had the same level of precision and pace as these guys early on. So keep an eye on Paul Jura, keep an eye on Valerio Gallo to go through the carousel for the second time. Still more than half of this race left, so a lot can happen at this point. A lot of pit stops still to come as well. Big question really is whether a lot of these medium runners, are they going to box at the end of this lap?
Yeah, it's interesting looking at the safety times. They all look pretty good out there. I mean, they're not going to be as quick. Oh, as Drumont is a little bit deep there with Laboutelet all over his rear wing, and I just wonder whether Drumont's mistake is just going to give the opportunity for Laboutelet to try and attack, and is he going to use that to his advantage? Where are they up the road to Murphy? About 1.3 seconds away from the Irish driver, so that could come into play here as well, because Murphy's on a slower compound of tyre and could be a bit of a cork in the bottle. It might favour Laboutelet, it might favour Drumont, depending on how it works out, really. Let's have a look at what happened meanwhile with Benelli. So you've got Jura here on the outside. We're in a flat-out part of this circuit, and then Gallo is going to get a bit of a biff. Does a very good job to keep it on the straight and narrow. The upshot is, though, as we said, but Benelli losing 2 places.
It was fine. I think it's fine. It's just hard racing, you know. They both came out okay, and I think that, yeah, no further action from my point of view anyway. But I'm not a steward as much as I try to be.
Oh, Drumont on the inside there of Jay Murphy, and now this is important here for Thomas Laboutelet as well. He needs to get ahead of the Irish driver in that McLaren as soon as he possibly can, because all the time he's stuck behind him, he's losing track position, losing time that he's then going to have to gain back up later on in the race. And is Murphy going to have anything to do with defending it? He is. He sort of parks the car on the apex there, denies an opportunity for Laboutelet. So this is music to the ears of Kylian Drumont. Side by side they go. Laboutelet's got the inside line and surely will now finally take the position, but you know, he's lost about a second or so in relation to his compatriots.
Yeah, that is going to be huge for the BMW's race there, because now they've lost that slipstream, they've lost that toe, and will he be able to get it back again? We know that Laboutelet has pace in that BMW, but has he got enough to claw back the gap to Kylian Drummond. This is the best pace for him down the straight here. That BMW does have legs, the Subaru does not. So let's see. But Drummond already now coming up to the back of the guys who haven't pitted so far. Oh, but Benelli back past Gallo.
Yep, so Benelli on the attack against Valerio Gallo coming down the Dossinger Her then. So the two medium shod runners still squabbling for position. The Mercedes is ahead for now, but what about Gallo in that Honda NSX? He's going to try and retaliate at the end as we come through the fast left hand, and we've already seen side-by-side action between these two. It just about stayed clean last time. This time, Benelli is able to hold firm ahead of the Italian. As Serrano then comes into the pits from the lead of the race. Are the other medium shod runners all coming in? Looks like they are. Aside from Valerio Gallo, he's decided to go for another lap.
Yeah, interestingly, I think that this is where the strategies are going to start to diverge. And so Knife Alfala doing the same thing as well. Also going for the...
So this is interesting, actually, because we were talking about this to Mikael Hizau yesterday, who is very much involved as part of balancing the performance of these cars, and he was saying that the mid-engined rear-wheel drive cars, i.e. the Honda NSX, the Lamborghini, etc., they're a bit easier on their tyres compared to the front-engine cars, like the Mercedes, like the BMW, for example, so, like the Lexus. So maybe they're using that mid-engine layout, and they've just got a bit more tyre life in their pocket compared to their competitors, and that's what is giving them the comfort to carry on.
Yeah, but the downside to running those mid-engine cars is they're a bit nicer on turn and they rotate better, but of course that means they're a bit more sketchy. They tend to wear the rears a bit quicker as well. So Gallo might be leading right now, but he's going to have a car that's going to be handling. It's going to be pretty tricky getting this thing around at pace on on these worn medium tyres. But Gallo, we know he's a very quick, very capable driver, our 2021 Nations Cup champion, of course. But as you say, yet to taste success in the Manufacturers' Cup.
Be interesting to see a comparison in the lap times here as well between the likes of Gallo and then Kylian Drummond, because they're both on the medium competitive tyres. Of course, Gallo's been on those from the start. Drummond has changed from the softs onto the medium, so they're both worn tyres, but Drummond's are in a far better condition compared to Valerio Gallo. Where were we last time around? So Gallo was an 8:09, but of course we saw Drummond pitting last time around as well. So we'll keep an eye on the different sector times. At the moment, Gallo is looking pretty handy at the sharp end of this one. So let's see how he can work this one out, and also what the likes of Drummond and Le Boutelet can do. But the gap between Drummond and Le Boutelet, we saw it increasing courtesy of Jay Murphy sort of interjecting between the two. It's now up to 1.6 seconds, so out of slipstreaming range.
Importantly, Gallo has got something that not really anyone else has right now, which is a nice big clear circuit in front of him. So right now he's just driving into that gap and trying to make as much of a gap as possible.
Now, I was talking about Mikael Hizau a few moments ago, and this is by magic he's come and joined us in the commentary box. Mick, great to have you here. How are you?
Hey, good, and you guys?
Very good. All the better for having you here. This is going to be, I think, the thinking driver's race, this one, isn't it? There's a lot of different strategies going on in terms of tyres and in terms of fuel. How do you see this one working out? Who, in your opinion, having watched it from the sidelines at the moment, is in a prime position?
So, you already talked about the tyre wear before, the different strategies, while some of the other drivers already went into the pits at the end of lap 2. Personally, when I saw that, I was already quite surprised to see them coming in so early, because normally you would try to use the softer tire compound as long and as much as possible. So I'm kind of scared of their second lap on the soft tire compound, so we might see some drama towards the end of the race.
So this is for the drivers that pitted and they're on the medium tyres at the moment. They're going to do 2 laps on the hard. Let's have a look here. This is what cost Le Boutelet ultimately against Jay Murphy. Murphy doing his own race, entitled to be in that position, but Le Boutelet, of course, has now hemorrhaged time to Drummond, and that's a big gap that he's now going to make up.
Yeah, but I think in those moments, if you're Jay Murphy, you're going to get passed by that guy. There's no point fighting, and you both cost each other time at that point. So I mean, as you say, definitely his own race, but he just cost himself time in the end. But I mean, Mick, of course, you've driven here tons of times. Virtually, these cars inside out. What would you say is the key factor to getting around here quickly and in one piece? I mean, all these different guys with different machinery as well. So,
I think the biggest factor for this track is confidence. If you don't have the confidence to use the curbs or to know your car well around the circuit, then you're automatically going to end up losing a lot of time here. And we are already talking about the longest circuit in the world. So obviously there are a few cars on the track which are like easy to drive compared to a few other cars here, such as the Honda and the Ferrari, in my opinion, are a bit harder to drive than some of the other FR cars out there. But nevertheless, we are talking about the best drivers here in the world, and usually I also expect them to have like a lot of confidence in their own car.
So we have Kylian Drummond now in the Subaru going up the inside of Giorgio Mangano, just lets him through there. As you said before, just make him try sure to lose as little time as possible. And with Valerio Gallo, he's gone for that third lap on the medium tyres. They're pretty worn right now. That car's mid-engine. What can he be expecting handling-wise now for the second half of this lap?
I think he should be still fine towards the end of the lap, because I expect him to do either one lap on a hard tire and then to finish off the race on 2 laps on softs, because normally the lighter your car is, it's also going to be more gentle on the tires, and I think that's the objective of Valerio here.
Well, we're talking about the difference between the medium tyres and who's on worn tyres and who's on less worn tyres. Drummond, of course, changed over from the softs at the start of this one over to the medium tyres. He's now, of course, driving like he's left the gas on here, really, isn't he? Because he's, up into third place ahead of Giorgio Mangano. And again, that gap between himself and Thomas Laboutelet, I mean, it's not really increased. It's still about 1.5 seconds, relatively speaking. But, it's pretty stable between those two at the moment. So be keen to see how quickly Laboutelet is going to be able to dispose of Mangano here. Because, again, this could cost him time. And ultimately, it's going to mean that he's going to have to try and make that time up later on in the race.
Now, I'm also a bit scared to see Mangano, due to the tire life of his medium tires at the moment, is going to hold up Thomas Laboutelet from the downhill section onwards. But maybe he can also try to overtake Mangano like Kylian did on Jay Murphy on the previous lap. If he's able to do that, then it's still anything open for the fight for the victory.
Well, catching the wrong driver at the wrong time on this circuit, Jimmy, as you well know, is a difficult thing to have to contend with. How do you manage that frustration inside the cockpit when you know you've got a quicker car, you know you're going to be able to find your way through? How do you do it?
Let me tell you, I'm glad there's not a mic in that cockpit, because you should hear me. I mean, you might have heard the Frank Stippler thing from a little while ago.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Either that, or I am glued to the high beam button. Get out of the way, move.
There
you go. Yeah, through goes the boots there, getting it done. Again, I think Mangano, Giorgio's been around for a long time. He knows the score. He's not going to sit there on the racing line and cost them both time. He gets out of the way, does it in a way that costs him as little time as possible. But yeah, good for now. Interestingly, Gallo's gap at the front has gone up now to 7 seconds. It was 4.9 at the start of the lap, but of course he hasn't pitted yet as well. So Drummond and Gallo, the ones to watch right now, I think, as well as Laboutelet also has taken his pit stop.
So, how's this one going to play out? Because, of course, Drummond and Laboutelet, they're going to be on the hard tyres for the closing stages of this race, whereas the likes of Valerio Gallo, he started on the medium, he's on the medium, so he's going to run the softs and the hards. The drivers that have run the hards at the moment, you've got Serrano, Ura and Benelli, so they're sort of taking the pain now in this middle stint of the race, hoping that, of course, when they get into the latter stage of it, that they're going to be able to just, drive through and wait for the seats to part, essentially.
That's true, but I think because of them only using the medium tires for 2 laps only, I see they want to use the soft tire compound for 2 laps as well. I'm just a little bit scared to see that the end of the second lap is going to be so, I don't want to say bad, but really, really slow for them, so that they can even see the finish line in the end. So.
Oh, look at the closing speed here for Laboutelet on Alflia, then going through on the Dottinger up into third place then for Thomas Laboutelet. So those are your 2 effective race leaders here, Drummond and Laboutelet at the moment, though they're in second and third on the road. Of course, Gallo, as we know, still has a pit stop. He makes that pit stop now. Goes from the medium tyres. Which way is he going to go in terms of this one? Surely it'll be hard tyres for a middle stint and then soft tyres towards the end, or are they going to ignore that strategy and just do something completely different? Let's see how it is going to work out. Either way, Gallo has gone a lap longer than some of his other competitors, and it seems to have made it work okay so far, and he actually goes for the soft tyres, so he's going to have the hard tyres at the end of that one. Is that the way you'd have gone, Mick?
Wait, I'm just realizing Kylian and Thomas started the race on soft tyres, right?
Yeah.
So did they only do 2 laps on mediums?
Let's have a look. They did 3 laps on mediums according to
Okay.
one lap on soft tyres, then change over to the medium tyres.
Okay, then I was just seeing something wrong. My bad, I apologize.
Don't worry about it, we've all been there.
What are you doing?
I got scared for a second there, but...
Well, so look, the upshot is now you've got Drummond and Laboutelet. They're now on the hard tyres to the end of this race, aren't they? They're not going to be pitting again because it'd be completely pointless, you would assume.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, because obviously, the time you're going to lose, even if you went onto the soft tyres, it's not enough time that you would gain, essentially, even if you were on a quicker compound at the end of this one. So they're now in a position where, from now until the checkered flag, they're losing time compared to everybody else that's behind them. You've got Serrano, Ura and Benelli. They're on the hard tyres for the middle stint. What they're trying to do, I guess, is eke these out so they can get as fresh a soft tyres as they can for the end of it.
That's one of the plans they have, but on the same time to have as less fuel as possible.
Right.
Because for this race, we're using times for tyre wear around the circuit, which is a lot. Like, once your tyres are like in a really bad shape, you're going to end up losing a lot of time compared to the other drivers who have like much fresher tyres than you. And yeah, I assume at the end of this lap we might see Serrano going to go into the pits as well as Paul Buda and Lucas Bonelli, unless they might go for a bit safer strategy to continue the race, or like continue to get another lap on the hard tyre compound and finish off on the soft.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? You do 2 laps on the soft tyre, you can do it if you the tyre whisperer, but it's, we were talking about it before the start of this race. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yes, because if you want to do 2 laps on the softs, your outlap alone has to be so gentle. Because once you do like Kilian did here, like a slide on the tyres, it's going to affect your tyre wear in the end. And with times 4 for the soft tyre compounds, this is something that tyre doesn't like in the end.
Really interesting insights there from Mick Gazelle. I've been keeping an eye on the front of the field, Tenzin Serrano and Paul Ura there on the hard compound tyre. I mean, never count these guys out. We know how quick the Spanish duo are. Serrano now 4 seconds good of Paul Ura in that Porsche. What do you think, Mick? Do you reckon that strategy is the one? I mean, they're out on their own. I mean, they're on the hard tyre, but there's no one around them, not losing speed.
I think this might not be too bad to be on your own, because we've already seen with Kilian Drummond and Thomas Laboutelet on the previous lap. If you are like getting stuck with traffic in front of you, you're going to end up losing a lot of time, which is not really optimal for your own stint. So if you're like on your own, you can also dictate your own race. And yeah, let's see. I think the end of the race is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, another look there of the pass of Laboutelet on Mangano last lap. Back to lap 4, and we see that Laboutelet has gone right back up to the rear spoiler of Kilian Drummond. That 1.5 second gap gone as well. There is a fuel to consider in this race as well, so he might put a little bit less in. Looking at he's got about the same fuel as Drummond right now. So very, very close, and that's really basically happened because Jay Murphy went onto on the medium compound tyre and overtook them both and then put them back together again. Yeah, it's interesting how it sort of caused this bottleneck effect now really here with Jay Murphy again being the cork in the bottle. We saw that with Laboutelet in the opening stages of this race, and he sort of ended up back in exactly the same position here with Alifa, Drummond and Laboutelet right on his rear wing, and let's see whether it's going to cost them time. I mean, Alifa here, again, he's not in a race with effectively what is the top 2, and all the while they're stuck behind him. They're just hemorrhaging time corner by corner. They need to try and find their way through sooner rather than later.
But even if you want to let the other drivers behind you go through because they're like in their own race in a different strategy, doing it at this circuit is so difficult to do, which some of the other drivers are also underestimating in the end.
Oh, look at that! Drummond getting aggressive, and Alifa into the wall! Side by side they go. That's going to cost Drummond. It might even open the door here for Laboutelet to find his way through. Amazingly, they all manage to exit the corner in exactly the same positions and indeed the same direction as they entered. But that was pretty aggressive and robust, and a little bit scrappy from Kilian Drummond there.
Just as Mick was saying it there, he had to make the move. You have to just go for it sometimes, but it requires the other driver to let it happen. And right now there, Nathan Alifa did not allow that, but now putting indicator on after the damage is done, I think. It's all right, I'm sorry, I'll get out of the way. And for good measure, hip check on the way by. These guys are not hanging around, but more importantly, all that time they spent there behind the Lamborghini has meant they've all lost time to the field. So what was a strong start for both Drummond and Laboutelet might change now. Now, if you're Laboutelet, do you go for the pass here? You've got the opportunity to do so. You're into the toe.
Well, it has worked beautifully here for Laboutelet, hasn't it? Because if you remember, they had a 1.5 second gap a couple of laps ago, and it's brought the Frenchman right back onto the rear wing of the Subaru here and brought him back into contention effectively for what could be the victory of this race. So let's see how this one is going to work out. We're heading towards the middle part of the lap, in towards the carousel section. There's no overtaking through this part of the lap, not unless you fancy getting your Christmas dinner through a straw. And Le Boutelet sitting in the wheel tracks of the Subaru as they come through this fantastically famous banked corner, arguably the most historical part of the Nordschleife layout.
I'm interested to see, Tom, sorry to cut over you there, what Gallo's doing, because he's now sort of stuck behind the first two that are on hard tyres. Let's have a look at this one more time. Yeah, slowest part of the circuit there, and there's just no gap for error. As soon as there's contact, you find yourself just going straight towards the barrier. Dumont there thinking, oops, probably shouldn't have done that.
If you're a steward, Mick, we saw it was under investigation. Are you going to be looking at that? And is that cause for a penalty? Do you think?
Personally, I'm not a person who wants to decide like those kind of incidents here. But if I want to make those kind of moves, I would be a bit smarter in the end. Because for sure, you don't want to end up losing a lot of time due to the driver in front of you having worse tires than you. And you also have like your opponent literally being behind of you.
Exactly as Jimmy said, by the way. Look at this. He's all over the back of Paul Ura like a bad rash here, trying to get his way past. Of course, Gallo on the soft compound tyre, Ura on the hard tyres. Fuel to consider here as well for the front runners. Look how much less fuel Serrano has got compared to Ura. He's got, what, 13 litres fewer?
Yeah, but this is a nightmare for Gallo, because he spent the entirety of the last half of the lap here stuck behind a guy on hard tyres. He's just basically wasting that soft tyre life. I mean, maybe good for his plan, Nick. Maybe he's going to try and do soft tyre for 2 laps. He can just sort of let the tyre rest a little bit, but I think it's not worth the time, surely.
Yeah, I think it plays in the hands of Paul Ura in the end, because not only can he hold Valerio Gallo behind of him, who's like on the soft tyre compound at the moment, but once he uses the soft tyre compound later on, he will have much fresher tyres than Valerio on that stage.
Yeah, and also look at Lucas Benelli. He's keeping him right in play here behind in that Mercedes as well. And Benelli in this race still owns the soft compound of tyre as well. Now let's see what the slipstream is going to be like here for Valerio Gallo and for Lucas Benelli. Ura is surely going to be a sitting duck. Gallo pulls to his inside, and you would imagine you're going to see Lucas Benelli going through before too long. There he is, stage right. And Ura losing 2 places down the Dottinger Her. So now you've got a Honda and an AMG in front of a Mazda for second and third at this stage of the race. Now let's see what Gallo can do in the closing stages of this one, as Serrano does finally pit from the race lead. He had no choice, he's got no fuel left.
Yeah, out to box there comes the Boutelet on. Look at that speed difference there on the Subaru, like it's standing still. There goes the Team BMW and Thomas Boutelet up into what will be, we think, the overall lead, but we don't know. Right now it's the 10th on circuit, everyone's pitting in, so a little shakeout once it's done. Oh, a little bit of a sideways moment there. You can see a little down.
So Ura then comes into the box, as well as De Bruyne. Serrano's in there as well, and we're going to see a smorgasbord of drivers, I'm sure, going on to the soft compound of tyres for the closing stages of this one, which is, as we know, going to handicap those who are in front. And we've got, what, 2 laps now remaining, and 2 laps on any normal circuit, not that long of a time. 2 laps, though, at the Nürburgring 24-hour layout, you've got time to make it work.
Speaking of which, because I had another look on the tyre history in terms of the strategy, and it is true. Thomas Boutelet and Kylian Dumont used the medium tyres for 2 laps only, and not 3.
There we go.
So I have no idea why they think that 3 laps on the hard tyres is the best strategy. But
there you go, guys.
We will see that in the end. I would like to see myself getting wronged here.
The person behind balancing the cars does not know what's happening. he's got no idea. But I did notice, though, the tyre wear of Valerio Gallo. Those rear tyres looking very sorry for themselves already, and he's not even onto the Nordschleife yet. So if Valerio can keep
De Bruyne off onto the grass on the outside, and Benelli getting pretty robust there, finding his way through.
I don't know if he was there, Tom, for that. He was only just on the rear bumper, but that's not our job to think about it right now. Our job is to look at this as we now come through Flansgarten for the first time. Hop goes the car into the right hand, using that high-speed aero grip of the BRZ. 1.1 seconds is a gap. Now Dumont knows if that gap is any less than like 7/10 or so, he's going to be a sitting duck on that straight, so he's pushing hard for this last section. Can the Boutelet give an answer in these last few corners before the Dottinger Her?
I think it's going to be tough for Le Boutelet. Again, pretty even in terms of the tyre wear. Jura and Serrano's challenge is going to be coming to an end, but look an eye out in the background. Cue the Jaws music, because Mikolaj Sedlak in the Nissan is now all over the rear wing of Jose Serrano for 4th position. He's about half a second or so away, and there's one big long straight remaining, and now you can see just how close that gap is between the 3 machines and the 3 drivers. Jura in 3rd in the Mazda, Serrano in 4th in the Porsche, Sedlak in 5th in the Nissan. They come onto the Döttinger Höhe for the final time. Leboutelet versus Drumont. The gap is about 1.5 seconds, and they're out of slipstreaming range as it stands for now then. So if Drumont can just keep himself on the straight and narrow, it's all eyes on the battle for the final podium place. And here we go then. Serrano splits the middle, Jura as well. But here comes Mikolaj Sedlak on the inside in the Nissan. Has he got the straight line speed? Has he got the advantage to try and use it? The headlights illuminating the darlings as they blast their way down at nearly 300 kilometres an hour, 3 abreast. Sedlak on the inside, Serrano in the middle. Jura on the outside as we come over the rise. Jura gets through and into 3rd. Serrano versus Sedlak for 4th place as they come into the final corners of this race. And are they going to make it? Sedlak goes through on the outside to the checkered flag. Kylian Drumont takes victory for Subaru here in Berlin ahead of Leboutelet, and 3rd for Mikolaj Sedlak for Nissan. What a phenomenal end to this race. On his debut in the Gran Turismo World Series, Mikolaj Sedlak gets a podium position. Absolutely fantastic.
What a move from Sedlak. That's move of the race right there. Just switch back on the last possible moment, and you know Paul Jura saw it, was like, oh no, he's there. Use the grunt of the GTR, and 3rd place on debut for the 18-year-old here in the Manufacturers' Cup. What a result there for Sedlak and Team Nissan. But of course, your winner, Kylian Drumont, Team Subaru, take another win here in the Manufacturers' Cup. Leboutelet 2nd and Nissan, and Sedlak 3rd. Thoroughly enjoyable race here, and of course another.
One can be crowned the winner of World Series 3 in 2025 here in Los Angeles. This is going to be hugely exciting to see what will happen as the drivers are ready to go for the start of this race. Let's work out how they all line up on the grid. The sprint race decided it just a few moments ago, and it sees Jose Serrano, the championship leader, lining up on pole position. Kylian Drumont is alongside him on that front row of the grid. Row 2 is headed by the quadruple world champion Takuma Miyazono, with Kai de Bruyne, the debutant podium man from Berlin, alongside. Then Paul Jura heads the 3rd row of the grid in 5th place ahead of Thomas Leboutelet, who started last in the sprint and managed to get to 6th at the checkered flag. He's just in front of Takuma Sasaki and Adriano Carrazza. Next up on the grid, you've got Guy Barbara in P9, and completing the top 10 is Angel Inestrosa, whose mistaken strategy cost him very dear. Valerio Gallo, 2nd in the championship, lines up P11 ahead of this grand final, and Samuel Cardinal P12 as well. Now, we've got a difference in tyres at the start of this race. Soft, medium and hards available for the drivers. A lot of the drivers there starting on the medium tyres, but 3, Barbara, Inestrosa and Gallo, going for the hards at the sharp end of this race. What do you think that's all about?
I think it's exactly what we discussed. It's thinking how to do something different, especially for Valerio Gallo, who comes in this race 2nd in points, having a disastrous sprint race there, puts him at the back of the field. He's thinking maybe not just about winning, but it's just moving himself forward towards the points. You have to do something different, knowing he'll be in a bit of traffic early on, and see if this could work to his favor.
Yeah, I imagine the idea, of course, with the hard tyres is get them out of the way as soon as you possibly can. The hard tyres like lava, basically. You don't want to be on it for as short as a distance as you possibly can, given the pace difference between the softs, medium and the hard tyres. So get them out of the way, get yourself themselves onto the medium or the soft tyres and make some progress in the mid to the latter stages of this race. But Jose Serrano will lead the field around the final corner and across the line as we get the grand final underway here for the Nations Cup in Gran Turismo World Series 3 in Los Angeles. We're in the Daytona Road course and we're coming down towards the first turn with Serrano leading from Kylian Drumont. On the brakes we go. Already moves being made in the background there with Cardinal having more grip under braking. He was looking for a move on Valerio Gallo. Also, Euro coming under pressure from Thomas Laboutelet as well. We come to the infield section for the first time. Pretty even Stevens and pretty fair and sharp at the front of the field. But let's see how it all works out as we come through the fast left-hander and in towards this hairpin.
Yes, the other horseshoe. The first one's the international horseshoe. This shoots you towards turn 6, which leads on to the first portion of the banking, one of the most important corners on this racetrack. It's tough to get the power down right here. The track kind of falls away to the outside. You see a little wiggle there from Miyazono. That will happen lap after lap.
Yeah, no doubt about it. On board here we are there with Kylian Drumont on the banking then. You can see Jose Serrano's gone for a low part of the banking there, and he's able to hold the speed quite nicely. We come down in towards what was known as the bus stop chicane, now known as the Le Mans chicane. We flick it through that left-hander. You can hear it's just sort of a courtesy lift as you go through there, shift it down the gearbox and running as close to the grass and clip the grass actually on the outside of it. But Jose Serrano doing a great job leading this one. A couple of tenths in front of Kylian Drumont. Here though is Takuma Miyazono sitting in the wheel tracks of Kai de Bruyne. You've got Paul Ura and Thomas Laboutelet very close behind indeed, and here comes Kylian Drumont side by side. He is now with Jose Serrano to take the lead of the race as we come across the timing line for the first time of asking. He's through and into the lead. It's kicking off behind there as well. You've got Kai de Bruyne who is side by side with Takuma Miyazono as we come through the first corner. De Bruyne now up and into third place. I would imagine in the cockpit of that car if he finishes in P5, but again there's still a bit of time for him to try and turn around those fortunes.
And Poyera's just gotten 2 more tenths on that lead right now, up to 1.4 seconds. That's the biggest lead we've seen in this race yet, with just a couple laps to go. 1.5 now as they get onto the banking. He's doing exactly what we talked about, what we thought Jose Serrano was trying to do earlier, had the chance to do, and that is jet away from the field, get away from that track and see if you can get it to where they can't even.
Here in Berlin for Gran Turismo World Series 2. How is this one going to play out, and how are the championship tables going to reflect the results as we head further into the World Series of this season? Well, Kylian Drumont continues the strong momentum for Subaru as they line up on pole position here today with Thomas Laboutelet and BMW alongside. Then it's Porsche. Disappointment in London. They bounce back to start P3 ahead of Mikolaj Sejak in 4th position, the Polish driver who makes his debut for Nissan. Then it's Paul Ura for Mazda, P5. Valerio Gallo in the Honda NSX is 6th on the grid. Lucas Binelli lines up P7 for Mercedes AMG, and Al Flair with the Saudi Arabian driver for Toyota, P8. De Bruyne lines up P9, and then you've got Giorgio Mangino in 10th position for Lexus. João Jesus for Ferrari in 11th position, and Jay Murphy, the McLaren driver. A lot of support for him here tonight. And now, of course, our first look at the tyre strategies for the first time. Now, we can see the top two, Drumont and Laboutelet, they've started on the soft combative tyre, which to me indicates that they're going to try and make a break early.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've seen the pace from Drumont in qualifying, and of course Laboutelet, both very quick over a single lap. Last thing they want to do is ruin the ability to run that pace by running in a pack. So, yeah, go for soft tyre. I'm surprised to see Sejak there running the hard tyre in P4, so he will be basically in the way of all the medium runners behind, but the longer he can keep them there, the better for his race. So definitely some strategy in those tyre calls already. Yeah,
it seems like he's sort of trying to go ugly early, as it were, get those hard tyres out of the way as soon as he possibly can, hold the pack up while they're all quite close behind, and see whether he can use that to his advantage. Well, let's see what will happen. Who has called the strategy right? Who will be taking the checkered flag and those all-important 6 points? We're about to find out as Gran Turismo World Series 2 for the Manufacturers' Cup here in Berlin is underway. Drumont and Subaru lead them down towards the first corner, followed by Laboutelet and then Serrano and then Sejak in the Porsche and the Nissan respectively. Don't expect any dive bombs down into that first corner, but Serrano closing up. I say that, there are some dive bombs taking place as Jura is making hay whilst the sun shines. He's already on the attack against Sejak, but Sejak goes back through on Valerio Gallo as well as Jura, back up into fourth. So moves being made in the mid-pack there, and Sejak looking a little bit vulnerable as we expected on those hard tyres.
Yeah, Sejak there showing Jura on the outside of the circuit, really hard defending early on, but you're seeing the difference there, those hard tyres. They take a while to fire up, they're going to be cold right now. When they're cold, they have less grip. So right now, Jura, Benelli, Gallo all making advantage of the fact they have a softer compound, is up to temperature quicker, and then just able to drive by him like he's standing still. You could argue maybe that's not a bad thing because they're not going to squabble so much, but if you're Sejak, you've gone from 4th to 7th in about straight, so that'll keep
wide.
it there. Yeah, it's wide there, but Nelly's through. He just can't hold on anymore. Those soft tyres have just fallen off. But do you reckon he got the best out of that? Do you reckon that was a good gamble for him, Mick?
Not really, because at first he also got pulled up by Paul Jura, I believe it was, where he also lost a lot of time there. And now here to the end of the second lap, where the soft tyres are not even there anymore, basically. You were able to see how close Lucas Bonelli was like behind the Valerio throughout the entire lap.
I really think, I'm looking, sorry, we have access to the fuel numbers here. I'm sorry you guys don't at home, but right now the person with the most fuel in the top 4 is Sejak, by quite some way. He's got 20 litres of fuel in the car right now to 6 and 4 and 7 from Jesus. So, although Gallo is getting by here, there'll be a pit stop for the top 4 now, and I think we're going to see the Nissan driver probably come out in the lead.
Yeah, he'll come out in front of that group of drivers. Where will he emerge, though, in relation to everybody else that's buying? Because they've got about 10 seconds or so. Look at this, though. Side by side as Gallo tries to fight it back against Lucas Benelli. They're both going to come into the pit lane at the end of this lap. They've got no choice. To Bruin off onto the grass on the outside, and Benelli getting pretty robust there, finding his way through.
I don't know if he was there, Tom, for that. He was only just on the rear bumper, but that's not our job to think about right now. Our job is to look at this as we now come through Flansgard for the first time. Hop goes the car into the right hand. They're using that high-speed aero grip of the BRZ. 1.1 seconds is a gap. Now, Drumont knows if that gap is any less than like 7/10 or so, he's going to be a sitting duck on that straight, so he's pushing hard for this last section. Can the Laboutelet give an answer in these last few corners before the dot into her?
I think it's going to be tough for Laboutelet. Again, pretty even in terms of the tyre wear. Jura and Serrano's challenge is going to be coming to an end, but look an eye out in the background. Cue the Jaws music, because Mikolaj Sejak in the Nissan is now all over the rear wing of Jose Serrano for 4th position. He's about half a second or so away, and there's one big long straight remaining, and now you can see just how close that gap is between the 3 machines and the 3 drivers. Jura in 3rd in the Mazda, Serrano in 4th in the Porsche, Sejak in 5th in the Nissan. They come onto the Döttinger for the final time. Laboutelet versus Drumont. The gap is about 1.5 seconds, and they're out of slipstreaming range as it stands for now then. So if Drumont can just keep himself on the straight and narrow, it's all eyes on the battle for the final podium place. And here we go then. Serrano splits the middle, Jura as well. But here comes Mikolaj Sejak on the inside in the Nissan. Has he got the straight line speed? Has he got the advantage to try and use it? The headlights illuminating the darlings as they blast their way down at nearly 300 kilometres an hour, 3 abreast. Sejak on the inside, Serrano in the middle. Jura on the outside as we come over the rise. Jura gets through and into 3rd. Serrano versus Sejak for 4th place as they come into the final corners of this race. And are they going to make it? Sejak goes through on the outside to the chicken flag. Kilian Drumont takes victory for Subaru here in Berlin ahead of Laboutelet, and 3rd for Mikolaj Sejak for Nissan. What a phenomenal end to this race on his debut in the Gran Turismo World Series. Mikolaj Sejak gets a podium position. Absolutely fantastic.
What a move from Sejak. That's move of the race right there. Just switch back on the last possible moment, and you know Paul Jura saw it, was like, oh no, he's there. Use the grunt of the GTR, and 3rd place on debut for the 18-year-old here in the Manufacturers' Cup. What a result there for Sejak and Team Nissan. But of course, your winner, Kilian Drumont, Team Subaru, take another win here in the Manufacturers' Cup. Laboutelet 2nd, and Nissan and Sejak 3rd. Thoroughly enjoyable race here, and of course another one that was down.
This is going to be hugely exciting, and the track is wet. We knew that weather was going to come into it. We weren't quite expecting it, though, at the start of the race. So who's going to plump for what tyres, and who will be leading down towards the first corner, crucially, as well. Kylian Drumont starts as one on pole position, a legacy of his victory in the sprint race. He's joined on the front row by his countryman, Thomas Leboutelet. Sasaki heads row 2. And he has got Kai de Bruin for company. Unlucky to miss out on a podium here earlier on. Pol Jura heads the third row of the grid, and he's got Valerio Gallo alongside him. Gallo, of course, making good progress, as we said, in that sprint race. Jose Serrano next up in P7, and Takuma Miyazono, who is the favourite in the Predict the Winner campaign, lines up P8 with Adriano Carrazza very close behind, and then Angel Inestrosa, the two South Americans, on the penultimate row of the grid. Guy Barbara in 11th position, and rounding it out is Samuel Cardinal, the Canadian. So we know the track is wet, and everybody has decided to start on the intermediate compound of tyre. We're looking at the fact that there's some wet patches, but they're mostly offline here, Jimmy. That seems pretty sensible to me. Yeah, but it does mean if you're going side by side with someone, there are patches of the circuit that your intermediate tyre are not going to be able to deal with. So it's something to think about when overtaken. Also, is that these guys, I can guarantee they practice mostly in the dry. So this is going to be maybe uncharted territory for them. I expect they'll struggle a little bit, but it'll definitely make the racing more entertaining, I think. Certainly will. Well, penny for the thoughts of that man, Kylian Drumont, and what's going to be running through his mind at the moment. Sitting on pole position with his countryman Thomas Leboutelet behind. They put in a great formation in that sprint race, but can they repeat it here in this grand final? They're out of the final corner and coming to the timing line. This, of course, is the all-important race for points for Gran Turismo World Series 2 for the Nations Cup. We drive to the line here at the Red Bull Ring. Weather in play and 30 laps of action to come. The lights go green and we go racing for the grand final of the Nations Cup here in Berlin. So Drumont leads them up to turn 1, and then Leboutelet, then Sasaki, but it's turn 3, the first big braking zone. That's the real opportunity for overtaking, and Drumont, of course, does not have the advantage of the slipstream, but he did have the advantage of a nice clean run out of the first corner. Sasaki looks to try and pounce here on Leboutelet. On the brakes we go. It's very close behind there as well. Serrano versus Jura. De Bruin's into the side of Sasaki as well. That's going to drop Sasaki down a few places, and Gallo is now through on his inside as well as Pol Jura. So 2 places lost in the space of 1 corner there for Takuma Sasaki. Not the start of the race he'll have wanted. Gallo, meanwhile, is on the inside of Jura and looks like he's made it stick down into turn 5. Serrano versus Miyazono side by side in the background. Action everywhere you look on the start of this race. Yeah, 3 places now lost for Sasaki. Gallo up 2, Kai de Bruin up 1. Now I'm sure the stewards will be having a little look at that one. It's quite an aggressive move there. Serrano now getting by Sasaki. That's 4 places lost for the Japanese driver, and now he's back with his countryman Takuma Miyazono. A terrible start there for the Japanese driver, but it just goes to show that qualifying doesn't always guarantee you a good start to the race. On board now, Sasaki, and look, he's that far back from where he started. You can see the spray being kicked up on the cars in front. Does hamper visibility a little bit, but not too much, enough to still see where you're going. But onto lap 2 now, and the driver's using all the curb on the exit there, so confident to do that on this intermediate tyre, but got to be careful because they might still find a wet patch yet. Yep, Carrazza's lost a couple of places from where he started. Gallo was the big winner on the opening lap. He made up 2 positions into P4. Into the braking zone of turn 3 we go. The closing speed there always makes me wince a little bit because they absolutely slam it on the anchors and just about get it stopped before making contact with the other drivers. Now, Jura and Serrano, they're in formation here in 5th and 6th position. Can the 2 Spaniards, who, of course, I remind you, were the top 2 finishers in the reverse order of where they are now in the first World Series event back in June. So, Serrano and Jura with a lot of work to do in 6th and 5th place there, respectively. Kai de Bruin, meanwhile, up into 3rd, but we know that incident on the first lap at the moment is under investigation. Yeah, we'll see what the stewards say on that one, but meanwhile, it's Drumont, Leboutelet, de Bruin. Drumont with a 1 second gap as it is. So here's a replay. Didn't see this one. This is Carrazza on board, P9 currently. On the... So... this is your battle for the race lead, but how is this one going to ebb and flow in terms of the weather? I mean, look at the sky. It looks pretty clear, pretty okay. Kai de Bruin got the run on Leboutelet there on the outside, better off the exit, just came off the racing line. Good launch there, looking around the outside. Can he make it stick on the Frenchman? He can. Right around the outside goes Kai de Bruin, back up into the lead of the race. Really nice move there by the Dutch driver. But as you say, Tom, I mean, like we haven't got a weather radar here on screen right now, so I can't tell you what's coming and what isn't, but the skies look good. I think we're going to go back towards maybe a drier circuit, so
I mean, the question remains, do you reckon you could have kept out on soft tyres? I don't think so. I think that would be too much.
Well, look, let's park that thought for now. The question now is, look, it looks dry, it looks perfect overhead, as you see the two Frenchmen squabbling for second place here with Labousselet and Drumont, but can you now go to the end of the race on the intermediate tyres, or are you going to have to make another pit stop and go to dry tyres if it dries out towards the end of this one? There's so much going on in this one, and the upshot is, now, for the first time, Kai de Bruyne it is that leads from Kilian Drumont, Labousselet in second, Serrano in third. You've got four drivers there separated by about 1.5, 2 seconds or so as they come on the run into turn 3, and now Kai de Bruyne, the Dutchman, leads a race for the first time in the Grand Finals in the nation. The points rankings here for Jose Serrano, it would be a clean sweep in the Nations Cup for him so far, but Paul Ura, he'd have been on for a level second place with Valerio Gallo had he finished where he was. The upshot is he's now looking set to not finish on the podium unless other drivers fall into severe misfortunes in the final half a lap here at this Red Bull Ring circuit. But Jose Serrano, his rear tyres are absolutely knackered at the moment. They're right down to the canvas, the cord and anything that's underneath that, and he's just going to be cruising his way. But he's got, what, 7 seconds in his pocket, and unless he makes a slip up of his lines in the final sector, I think this race is going to go the way of Jose Serrano. And what a drive it has proven to be. 2 more corners from home, and this is going to feel like the longest 2 of the young Spaniard's life. He now makes his way around the final corner. Jose Serrano makes it 2 wins from 2 races in the Nations Cup here in Berlin. What a performance from the Spaniard. Second place for Valerio Gallo, and P3 for Kai de Bruyne. His first ever podium in the Gran Turismo World Series. Sasaki versus Miyazono, and Miyazono mucks Sasaki at the checkered flag there as well. And Paul Ura, well, from what we saw, it looks like he threw away what could have been an almost certain podium here tonight.
I'm not allowed to describe this race in the way I want to because we're
Now my off-cop.
Yeah, we're a friendly stream that way. But what happened there? That was a ridiculous race, and how well played by Jose Serrano. You know what, going into this final, I was like, nah, he's not in it. It's going to be between the French guys, who ended 7th and 8th, by the way, Labousselet and Drumont. But Serrano just showing what experience means in these GT live events. Valerio Gallo, an amazing second place, who finished with pretty much no rear left tyre, and Kai de Bruyne finally getting back on the podium where he belongs. A couple of steps maybe lower than he wanted, but still an impressive performance there from the Dutchman.
Yeah, I have to say, if you're Kai de Bruyne